We are studying the parable of the lost son, verses 11 through 32. And we have been looking at verses 15 and 16 here because the takeaway, if you were listening the last time, and even if you didn't, it doesn't matter. Sin drains me, of all that is good. So we are thinking about this parable that Jesus is teaching about souls. And from the young man who has asked his inheritance, and we've learned already from verses 11 through 13, he's gone into this far country and he's spent everything. And now he's found himself, if you notice with me, he'd spent everything. There was a great famine. He began to be in need. So he hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. So it would be remiss if we didn't finish the thought that we had begun the last time we studied together. Sin drains me of all that is good. And I want you to notice what happened here. He went, and the implication is he had people around him. He was probably the fellow buying all the drinks in the bars. He was the man about town, but he'd spent everything. And notice what happened. There was a great famine. There was a great famine. What do you get from that? That when I when I take upon myself to fill myself with the world, there's going to come a time when I'm going to discover that all of those things mean nothing. Makes me think of what Jesus said in the book of Matthew. What shall it profit a person if he or she gains the whole world and loses his own soul or her own soul? What will a person give in exchange for a soul? And that's what this young man did. He wanted all those things that made him happy, but then there was a famine. And he went and joined himself to a citizen of that country, and he wanted to eat the pods. Now, let's stop there, that the pigs ate. First of all, understand this was a difficult situation. This young man had truly hit bottom. He was a Jewish boy. A pig, a swine, was an unclean animal. And here was a Jewish boy. How in the world did he get himself in this mess? Sin will take you farther than you want to go. Sin will cost you more than you want to pay. And that's exactly what's happening to this young man. This particular word, the pods, it actually describes, in the original language, it describes the fruit of a certain tree that was common in Syria and Egypt. That's kind of interesting. It makes you think and ask questions about just how far did this boy go? Where in this far country? Was he all the way over in Syria and Egypt? Very likely, for he found himself in a land where people kept pigs and they fed them. This particular pod was the fruit of a tree. It was horn shaped and dark brown and glossy, and it was filled with seeds. It makes me think of the description of what we consider an okra. But this fellow, it was the food of the very poor, and what you fed the pigs, swine. And here was this Jewish boy who should have had nothing to do with hogs, pigs, but he was feeding them. And I want you to notice, sometimes we miss this and say, oh, this poor fellow, he was in a bad shape. He was eating pig food. No, he wasn't. Look at the scripture again. He wanted to. He was so hungry. He was so in need. He began to be in need. Do you see that verse? That he wanted to eat what the pigs were eating, but he wasn't even allowed to do that. He was in a terrible shape. Reminds me of Galatians 6, 7, and 8. But don't be deceived. God isn't mocked. Whatever a man sows, that's what a man will reap. He who sows to the spirit shall of the he who sows to the flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption. He who sows to the spirit shall of the spirit reap life everlasting. Makes me think of the old adage. It isn't found in the Bible, but the principle is you reap what you sow. Sin drains me of all that is good and leaves me empty and leaves me hurting and leaves me hopeless. I pray that sin doesn't drain you. Thank you for studying with me today and for listening. I pray that God will bless you with a super day.